welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk Live here on the LTL Media channel. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in tonight and hanging out. We're going to have a power-packed show tonight and a lot of testimony to go through, a lot of conversations to have. We're going to talk about Proctor, and I could not do it without these awesome panel members I'm going to bring up here. Before I bring them in, I just want to let everybody know tonight, any super chat, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, 25% of the total at the end will get kicked back to Karen Reed's Defense Fund. I'm not going to wait too much longer. Let's get our guest in here and kick off the conversation. I'm going to bring in, of course, first, before her weekly check-in, we have Jess Machado.
Hi, besties.
All right. We have Mazza Media joining us as well.
Good evening, everybody. Free Karen Reed.
Yes, absolutely. And a newcomer to the panel. Let's bring in Brandi. How are you doing from the 13th Juror? How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. I always like 4 on the screens. I think 4 looks so good, and I feel like we're in Hollywood Squares. So, lots of stuff going on. We had Tully today. We had Proctor yesterday. But before we get into today's testimony, I kind of want to roundtable this really quick and get some first impressions about Trooper Michael Proctor. And let's start with Jess here at the top. Jess, let us know. You were in the courtroom. Tell us about some jury reactions when you were there with Trooper Proctor.
Yeah, I mean, listen, first of all, I think the build up to Proctor, it didn't disappoint. I mean, there was this back and forth on whether or not the Commonwealth was even going to call him. So there were some days where we didn't think we were really going to get it. And then finally they call him. And it literally did not disappoint. It was it gave everything that I thought it was going to give. As far as juror reactions go, you cannot understand what is going on in a juror's head when it comes to whether they think Karen is guilty or not. You just you can never tell. But this was by far the most animated I have seen any of the members of the jury. First of all, by the way, on the second day of Proctor, we lost a juror. So we lost a male juror that left, and supposedly it has nothing to do with the trial. But it's very funny. This is the one juror, if you follow my tweets, he was the one that always had his head in his hands. He was always head down, sometimes folded over. And one of the other members of the press and I had we come up with stories, like what we think they do in real life and what were they. And Sue O'Connell thought that he worked third shift. She said, I bet that guy works third shift, leaves there, comes to court, then goes home, crashes, and starts all over. Like, he looked like he had been working. He was not as rested as the rest of the jurors. And anyway, on the second day of Proctor, he was not there. So it changed the dynamic a little bit for sure. We were missing a person. The juror on the end moved over a little bit. Everybody was very animated. The women were shaking their heads in disgust, rolling their eyes, tilting their heads back, looking disgusted. Eyebrow juror that I call in the back, he's got like an eyebrow that he puts up. He was more of like a furrowed brow. We can talk about it, but the way that Jackson used the words in the courtroom, I described it as like it pierced the room. Can we use the words? Are we using the verbiage that was used? Or are we keeping this clean?
I don't know. We're all adults here. If anybody on the panel, it doesn't bother me.
Just go for it.
The way that Jackson was saying cunt in the courtroom, it was with the t at the end. It was so succinct and piercing, and it just demanded attention. And what he was asking for you to listen to were the words that this guy, who we're supposed to hold in such esteem as being, someone to protect and serve. And you can't get around it. There was nowhere to go. It was in your face. The jurors were mortified. Whether that equates to Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe, I don't know. But it was the most. And by the way, this is coming towards the end of the Commonwealth's, calling witnesses. In the beginning, these jurors were far more rigid. They didn't move around as much. They didn't talk to each other. the way that they talk. They weren't relaxed. Everybody, I mean, I wonder if they had put this in the beginning. Number one, would people have forgotten some of these things? But number two, would they have felt so comfortable where they could have reacted the way that they did? But I think at this point in the game, everybody's very comfortable. You can see jurors now conversing with each other, laughing with each other. The emotions were on full display. I would venture to say there were 10 jurors in particular that really just gave reaction to that testimony in a very disapproving way, for sure.
When the text messages first hit and they came out and that word was said for the first time, the C word, was that kind of the visceral reaction right away? Were people like, oh my God?
Well, I wasn't in the courtroom for the first day with Proctor. So I was there for cross, obviously. So I don't know, but even if they had heard it the day before, their reactions the next day were still just disgusted. My favorite juror number 4, her face, you can read she is so animated, rolling her eyes, and I mentioned too the other day, and I conferred with another member of the press. It's been a couple of days. Juror number 4 stopped taking notes. Her notebook stays underneath her seat. She was not, I wouldn't say an avid note taker, because there are a few of those that are constantly writing and then flipping back and forth. But juror number 4 has all but abandoned her notebook. And there's another juror, Vineyard Vines juror. He does not touch his notebook at all anymore. In my mind, I equate it to they've made up their mind that she didn't do it. But I also want to play devil's advocate and say maybe they've had their mind made up from the beginning that she did. But either way, I think that they've made their decision, and there isn't really much that could sway them either way at this point.
Maz, what do you think? Trooper Proctor. By the way, just let me do this really quick. Michelle kicks it off. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the $10. She says, love your panel. Y'all rock. Brian, thanks for sharing your reaction to Michael Proctor's vile messages. Everyone talks about, it probably was a longer message, but it got cut off. So we'll kick off the $10 and get that rolling. Mazza, what do you think, Proctor?
Well, Proctor is a pretty sinister guy. I mean, this is someone that consciously made the decision to frame an innocent woman for a murder that she did not commit, and then try to follow it all the way through with even trying to tamper and taint things as well, including taillight. Just absolutely sickening remarks that he made in his text messages. Just absolutely disgusting and unbecoming of a lead investigator. And furthermore, if a lead investigator is impartial and objectively investigating a case, then why would they ever have all these things to say in text messages or any other platform or verbally or any other way? That's just, to me, more than enough reasonable doubt right there to say, well, the lead investigator is reason. Sorry, I'm stammering here. A little tired. I've been up since 5:30. I'm not used to it.
All right.
It's more than enough reason for them to sit there and say, well, geez, I mean, this is a cop that's saying these kind of things about a woman that is being, investigated for murder, and he's not being objective. Why would he have anything personal to say in a negative connotation if there was no kind of back and forth argument between the two? He's supposed to be objective, but yet here he is making all these comments about her. It shows that he has a motive in terms of, well, we already know, we've already told that, the jury's already been told, hey, look, he knows these other people. And then here he is in these messages and whatever other means it might have been, that he's here smack talking her left and right. There's at least 2 cases of reasonable doubt right there to have this whole case thrown out. And this is just more evidence why this case should have been thrown out long before it ever reached the trial stage. It's like the Glare always says, it's a sham trial. It is a sham trial. Karen Reid's factually innocent, and to the jury, I've listened to Jess many times, and I had some of the thoughts in my head of what Jess has said before, and I tried to see some of that. And you know what? Quite honestly, I did. I saw quite a bit of what Jess has indicated, and I saw that in a few jurors. I only could look, Jess's vantage point's perfect because she could look right across, and they're on the opposite side of me. If I look over to the right, these bailiffs might be like, hey, bro, keep your head forward. So I was
don't make eye contact, right?
Yeah. The best time to look at the jury is when someone's at the podium speaking, whether it's Alan Jackson or Adam Lally. And every time you look over at them, you kind of glance. You pick like one juror and just glance real quickly, and you can kind of get them, visibly. There, I don't want to say who it is, but I'll just say it's a woman. And I will say this about her, and I just had a conversation before I went on about this. This is my impression of her. If she had never been selected as a juror, and if going back, say, for example, 6 months, she had learned about this case, I would believe that she would be as interested in this case as just about anybody else was if she had organically come across it. I felt like, you know what, I'm looking at her, and I have a friend, actually, a friend of mine I was just talking to a few minutes ago before we went live. She reminds me a lot of her. And she just kind of has that same organic reaction. The way she was looking at Alan Jackson when he was speaking was like she was hanging on to every single word he was saying.
I know who
And
you're talking about.
yeah, I know you do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. She was hanging on to every single word. And I said to myself, I put it in perfect terms. I'm like, if she hadn't been selected as a juror and she had found out about this case some time ago, I bet you any money she would be just as passionate as anybody else you're seeing in this whole, people that stand outside, for example, tuning into the show. I just got that exact drift, because that's exactly, in its organic state, how we've all kind of come to be. We've all heard this stuff, and when we hear this stuff, it's like, whoa. And when you're in the jury and you haven't heard this stuff before, and you start to see what the defense is presenting, that's that same exact reaction out of her. And that's why I always say the best example of a sample size of how the jury is going to basically determine the verdict can be determined upon by the amount of people that believe in Karen Read's innocence and the very, very few people that fight against us. So, I mean, looking at over 90% easily.
Yeah, no, I agree. Brandi, what do you think? Trooper Proctor, give us your rundown. Her eyes just went.
I mean, I know when I jumped on last night, I talked a little bit about him. Like, I feel like everything that he said was so repulsive. And I think that the problem isn't, and I see people minimizing it and saying like, oh, well, just because he said things about her doesn't mean that that she didn't do it or whatever. And I think that is missing the entire point. I think that the jury needs to be able to see that they have faith in the lead investigator, because if this is the main dude who's giving you all the information, and they're seeing that he is going to abuse power and not take his job seriously and misrepresent his connections to people in the case, that one's a huge one. It shows that he is, it's kind of like that, like I'm above the law type thing because I am the law. And if you can't have faith in him or trust him, then every single thing that is entered into evidence through him, and even though stuff was entered in through other people to try to avoid that, jury's not stupid. So that, we all know that it comes from the lead investigator. And I think that it puts like a cloud of doubt over every single thing that he has said, that he says, does, introduces, and all of that. So I think it's really bad for the Commonwealth that he's such a let me be ladylike. I'm not a fan. I'll just say that I'm not a fan.
Let me get to a couple of super chats, and then I want to kind of bounce off that point real quick. Nico 499 says, thank you all. Thought on Peggy. Oh, still thinking Karen did it. Okay, Tammy with a $10 thank you. Listening to many women, they are refusing to allow their daughters to turn to the Mass State Police when they need help. His superiors allowed this and participated in it. How horrible. Absolutely. Jody with a $50 super chat. Thank you so much. I've been following this since day one and heading to Dedham from Peabody with my daughter next week for the first time. Can't wait to meet all the wonderful people who are fighting for Karen and justice for John. Thank you so much for that 50. I appreciate that. And just come up and say hi to people. Everybody's very welcoming down there. It's not like a weird thing or anything. I wanted to just turn to this today because this was in the Boston Globe. Was this today? I think this was today's Boston Globe. And obviously we have the Mass State Police bombshell. But the biggest thing that I saw in this article is that gentleman right there. And I don't even really want to call and say that gentleman, but that is Brian Walsh. And Brian Walsh has been accused of murdering his wife, Anna Walsh. I think, this is over a year now. This has been, pretty close to maybe around the same time of Karen's case.
Not this past New Year's, the New Year's before.
Years before. And the problem with this is that all of the things that have been raised in the case is the lead investigator, and that is one Michael Proctor. And there was a motion that was actually filed by Brian Walsh's lawyer yesterday, pretty much trying to dismiss or look into Michael Proctor's investigation. This is going to cause a lot of things in the courts now because of all those things that were said in court and in this trial. And this opens a whole new can of worms, I think, for many cases. And the implications of this could be dire in some cases.
Hello, Michael Morrissey.
And Michael Morrissey. And the thing is, you got to look at it though. Like if he's, and I said this yesterday on my show, if Michael Proctor is talking this way in the Karen Reed case and having these types of conversations with his friends and his superiors, I almost guarantee you that behavior just didn't start here. This is something that's been talked in his conversations probably for quite a long time. So it's scary. It's very scary stuff. I mean, in my opinion. Anybody want to opine or?
Well, I thought the admitting on the stand that he drove his cruiser drunk with Brian Albert after a night of drinking and that Brian Albert misplaced his badge and his gun was another layer of seeing the type of police officer that Michael Proctor is right now. Like the first thing I thought about was like, are there any cops in my town like raging that hard and driving their cruises around and losing their badges and their guns? Like that's the first thing I thought of. And we have a small outfit here, you know what I mean? Not a lot of cops. And I'm going, nah, I don't think so. But I guess the statistics are it's probably true because we got Brian Albert and we've got Proctor doing it. That was pretty crazy testimony. And one of the jurors was shaking his head disapprovingly when that whole thing was happening. Juror 4 was rolling her eyes about the badge thing. You know, I thought Proctor came off very soft-spoken. You could hardly hear him. He was told to kind of speak up a couple times. But I think that was also another thing that the jurors picked up on. Your behaviors outside the courtroom don't match up with how you're talking here. Very soft-spoken and kind of like not shy, but definitely not how your texts sound. Definitely not how your night of drinking with Brian Albert sounds. And I think there are regular people over there that are obviously saying these two things don't match up. And
until he got to say what he wanted to about Unetti, and then all of a sudden he's
came out.
Yeah,
it came out. That was a pretty wild thing too. I'll let everybody talk about that. But if you want to go back to when he was redirected by Lally and that whole thing came up about Unetti, that was a wild thing to watch for the sidebar as far as the reaction of the defense team for that. But I'll let you circle back around with the Proctor and the Walsh thing. That case is going to be wild. He's still in jail because he was convicted of art theft. But
you know who was in jail with him? You know who was in jail with him, right? When he was in Turtle Boy.
Oh yeah,
yes,
that's right. Yeah.
And he said at some point he's probably going to write about it because he I guess he like talked to him a couple of times. He said he tried to talk.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's wild. I can't wait until he like writes that article. That'd be great. But yeah, you know, it's to me it was really interesting watching Proctor's body language through that cross. He wouldn't look up at Jackson. He knew he was in a hole, and deservedly so. You know, he said some really vile things. I mean, really vile things. I mean, even to the things that I was just like, my mouth was wide open. I was like, you've got to be effing kidding me. This guy went to this length. And I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. And it's horrible. I mean, that was broadcast, you know, everybody, I think, you know, I don't know. I think we get the sense because we live in Massachusetts that we're only kind of watching this in but this is like the world stage. People were watching that, and I can only imagine.
I'm in Florida.
You know, in Florida.
I met a woman from the UK today.
Yeah, I can only imagine, you know, the embarrassment that Karen had to go through. But I have to commend her. She stuck her head up high. She never faltered. She looked right at Proctor the whole time.
She glared at him when he was leaving. She followed him out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I talked to her mom during one of the breaks for Proctor, and I just asked, like, you know, how was she handling this whole thing, especially the medical pieces and things like that. And she told me that Karen has always been, even from when she was a younger girl, the kind of person that if she didn't agree with something or something didn't make sense to her, she questioned it. and she would push back and question it. And she's like, and so she's always been strong like that. And, you know, this is very indicative of like the kind of person she has always been, fighting back, asking questions, questioning authority, even if it doesn't make sense. And so she seems very strong and confident in the courtroom. If it's getting to her, you cannot tell.
Wow. Yeah, HIPAA violations. I'm going to tell you this, just based off that testimony, I'm sure Karen's going to have a very healthy civil lawsuit against Michael Proctor. Yeah. I just saw another chat here too that I wanted to play up. Kristen says he played victim just like his wife. His wife was on all over Facebook and Twitter, I think, like kind of ranting and trying to protect him. And I don't know. It's just very inexcusable behavior. Mazza, like, how did you feel when you started first hearing all of that? I mean, were you kind of taken aback, or is this something that you're just kind of like, yeah, you know, it was expected. I felt like this guy was probably having conversations like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, considering the amount of activity, and that's outside of the confines of the initial or whatever point of investigation in a physical sense, meaning on site or with the vehicle, there seemed to be a heck of a lot. You'd imagine that if there's a cover-up, which I believe there is, and we all of us do, that there'd probably have to be a significant amount of dialogue behind the scene in one way, shape, or form. And to me, this just kind of confirms that, you know, there was a lot of dialogue. They were saying a lot of things, and this was just totally, you know, this is so like your article, like your open letter that you wrote the other day. I read that and I said, you know, I'm not even going to write my own. I'm just going to basically, I'll sign my name next to yours or below yours if I have to, because it was perfectly written. It's just this man is you can't, you know, Turtle Boy said something the other day that if a teacher had said something about this about a student or whatever, even like a college professor, for example, it's not teaching minors, for example, this would be a fireable offense. If a boss started saying things about this about an employee, it would be a resignation. At the state police level, look, these are people that are not hired to teach or do another job. These are people that are hired to serve and protect and investigate criminal, you know, crimes, basically. And it's to have him saying these kind of things is just, it's absolutely outrageous. And, you know, I sat there listening to Alan Jackson read off, and even him make Mike read off what he said. And I'm looking at Karen and her mother and those the shots, and I'm just like sitting there like, I feel so bad that they have to listen to this stuff, because when you're in a situation like this, and this is outside the realm, let's just take it out of the realm of what actually occurred and the framing, the cover up, let's put it aside. If you're someone that's in a situation that it has a police officer involved at a town level, city level, state level, it doesn't matter. What you want, especially as a good, honest citizen, is you want a cop that's going to be objective, that is going to handle this case as strictly as possible and according to the code of conduct as much as possible. And when you have a cop like this, a state police officer, that's saying these things, thinking this way, and then all of a sudden you're finding yourself spending however much money on attorneys, legal fees, flying out experts, all this stuff, you know, that's, you know, these are expenses she shouldn't have had to have made because of this guy not doing his job. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. And I said this I might have been on the Young Jerks. I said it. Michael Proctor made a choice. He had a choice. No one told him to do all this stuff. No one told him to say all this stuff. He did it on his own. And there's multiple people that are involved in this thing that were not involved in the physical killing and physical placement of John O'Keefe's body on that front lawn, that involved themselves, that easily could have just either reported the cops or not got their hands dirty. And some of these people that did get their hands dirty, there's probably more dirt on their hands about this whole thing than there is on the actual people that actually committed the murder, because it's still up in the air who physically did what, how much contribution, you know, that's up in the air. But someone like Michael Proctor, you go to Sallyport, the video's inverted. Great joke today by Alan Jackson. I almost bursted out laughing in court. I sat there and, like, you know, still
seems to be a trend. Is that what he said? Seems to be a trend.
Yeah,
right?
The high school kid in me still exists in this mind somewhere that wants to burst out laughing like I'm a kid in class. and I put my hand to my face, and I looked at Allison. You might know who Allison is. And I looked over and I go, I had to cover my mouth because I was going to burst out laughing when he said that. And I was
Bev
like,
was not happy with him.
No.
She was not happy at all.
It was funny though.
She was miserable. I don't know if that appeared on camera, but me and Jess saw it in the courtroom. She was furious. Kind of a trend, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a trend, isn't it?
She's like, okay, jurors, we're gonna strike that, or what? She's
like, I told you about that before, Mr. Jackson. We're gonna strike that.
Yeah,
good stuff. Funny. All right, we'll talk about Tully, and I actually want to talk to Brandi once we kind of go through some of this. You did a timeline on the cell phone location, correct? You were talking about that.
Yeah. The cell phone stuff, because one of the things that I kept hearing from people about the morning after, and I put in one of my podcast episodes, I was like, there's, she's seen on video at the, and I didn't add the other video on here. I think I only put the temple, but she's seen on the temple video at 5:18, and then they said that she pulled up to Jen McCabe's at 5:35. When you look at the timeline of everything together, we know that she was on the phone for some of that, and then there were a few minutes that she wasn't on the phone. So I had said, I was like, okay, well, could she have gone by there? If she did, then with her making phone calls, I'm sure we'll hear some kind of cell phone data to put her there. And if she did, what could that mean? Does this mean, like, I like to try to look at both sides, try to rule things out, try to see what, and I was fully expecting to see evidence that she had gone there today. And I noticed when they were showing it, it was so hard to see the stuff. And I noticed immediately that people were saying like, oh, she just got busted going there. And I was like, yeah, let me put this on a chart for y'all. So the two towers that are you can see to the west side, between 603 and 657, at the times when we know for a fact she was there, those are the only two towers that were utilized. And then at whatever it was, 12:35 to 12:37, then 12:33 to 12:34, all that time. Those are the times that we knew that she was there, and those are the only towers that were utilized. So the times that are confirmed, because that's your control group, for a fact she was there during those times, and the only two towers that were used were the ones to the west. And so then the time when she is, they're trying to figure out if she went there beforehand. She didn't use either of those towers or hit on either of those towers, but she did hit on the one that's closest to McCabe's house. And if I'm a juror and I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh, okay, well, she didn't go there. I think
that they brought the jurors very close to thinking they were going to show you that she went there. I was nervous. I was like, here it is. You know what I mean? And he brought you just close, and then he didn't seal the deal. And then obviously, with Cross, they really kind of just blew it out of the water and disproved it. But there were a few moments there, I think, where I thought we were going to really get some. But as with everything with this case, the Commonwealth has failed to show us actual evidence of a murder. And this one fell flat as well.
Murder, if that. I mean, second degree. I'm sitting here, I'm going, where is the second degree murder? I can't see it. And again, I've said this over and over and over again. I know my position in this case. I mean, I think I've been very honest about it. I'm 100% Karen Reed. I mean, I'm 100%, and everybody on this panel has their own thoughts, and I respect that. But I just sit here and I'm like where I try to look at it as a neutral perspective when I watch this testimony, and I'm like, where I don't see, I just don't see it. It doesn't add up. It's not adding up for me. And then obviously, they'll go through on direct, and then they just get shredded on Cross. And I'm like, well, there you go. I mean, there's all the whole, it's Swiss cheese, it's just Swiss cheese when Jackson or Unetti or Little grabs them and gets them. So,
because I felt like that was one of the things that when I'm watching that, I'm looking at it, and because I've done so many of the maps and mapped things out and done so many of the charts on it, I know where Jen McCabe lives on a map. And so I'm looking at that tower and I'm like, they're not even saying that, that's such an important, that is a huge piece of information when they're trying to determine, because they're like, oh, look, she's at a tower, that tower is right over here, but they're not showing you. And it's funny because I sat there and made that I made the chart or like the little map thing while I'm live streaming and put it out. And I was like, people were asking me, you know, I showed it and we talked about it. And then I tweeted it and put it in our Facebook group. And then right after that, then Jackson gets up and is showing it. And I was like, I could have saved my damn time by just like waiting on him to get up there with his chart. But I was, you know, I was obviously, you know, he's not going to miss much. He's an excellent attorney. So but it was one of those moments, and it felt again to me like, is this once again a cross-examination getting up here and showing you the prosecution is trying to trick you? Because that's how it felt to me, because they weren't specifically saying, you know, the things that he did about like, look at the difference on where these houses are, and here's the McCabe's house, and that's where she said she was going, and this is the distance. And so it felt to me like it was intentional again to mislead them. It felt like a inverted Sally Port video all over again to me. So
yeah. I know what I wanted to ask Jess and Maz about. Damn it, I just lost my train of thought too. Damn it, I'm looking at my notes. The winter jacket. I want to talk about the winter jacket theory, because that came up today and I found that testimony a little interesting. And let's play Tully. We'll play about a minute or two of it. I want you all to hear about the winter jacket, because I find it almost preposterous what he says here, and I'd love to hear all your comments on this. Let me pull this up. Let's hear this.
You're not going to fail to do certain investigative tasks because it takes time. You're going to do what is necessary for the investigation, right?
Yes. I'm on screen.
You indicated that you did not believe there was information sufficient that y'all had at the very initial stages of the investigation to seek a search warrant or to ask for consent, correct?
Yes.
But you did know the following. In the initial moments of the beginning of the investigation, you were aware that John O'Keefe had been invited to a party inside a home, correct?
Yes.
You knew that home was located at 34 Fairview.
Yes.
You also knew that John O'Keefe arrived at 34 Fairview, correct?
We believe so, yes.
You also knew at the time that he had been, for want of a better phrase, partying with the individuals who were inside the home, correct? Expected to meet at the house.
They were at a bar previous to that, yes.
You're aware that a drinking glass was found in the yard attendant to or close to, adjacent to where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found.
Yes.
That drinking glass had been broken, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that drinking glasses are commonly found inside homes, right?
As well as bars.
As well as bars, right? But at that point, you didn't know. Just a broken glass, correct?
It's a broken glass, correct.
You also know that he was found without a coat on.
Yes.
Are coats normally worn outside or inside?
It's user's choice.
Fair enough. 18 degrees, you would expect that if someone was outside, they'd have a coat on, correct?
I'm the kind of person that wears shorts throughout the year. I'll often go without a jacket.
All right. A true Bostonian.
Yes, sir.
Can you pause it for a sec?
Coat.
Anytime you see me look down like that, when I'm looking down like that, that means I'm biting my effing tongue from what I really want to say. I go into like I'm just sitting there like looking down. I'm just like talking to myself like, don't say anything out loud. Just shut up. I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, but this is so preposterous. I mean, Jackson's like just saying, I mean, this is basic detective work. I'm sorry. Like if I'm called to a scene, okay, and I see someone outside and it's winter. I mean, come on. I mean, it's winter. This person that's down in the snow or laying across the lawn has no jacket on, lost a shoe, and he's 30 feet from a front door of a house. I'd probably say, well, I would think he probably came out of that house. But this thing that he goes into, oh, well, people wander. What do you say? People wander like miles from crime scenes and end up in other places. I'm like, dude, this is so preposterous. Like, what was the jurors' reaction to that? And I'll go to Jess and Maz on this one when they were hearing this.
Vineyard's Vine juror, that I call him because he always looks like he's dressed like Vineyard Vines. He laughed and nodded his head when Tully said he wears shorts all the time. It was like, yeah, dude, me too. The first thing I thought of is, listen, I have teenage boys. They never wear their coats out the door. I have an ex who wears shorts year round. So that definitely, I personally didn't think that was like the strongest argument I heard from the defense. I mean, it added another layer to the whole, why did you not even go into the house? I didn't think it was that strong. And I actually, it resonated with me that I don't think you could really say, listen, some people just don't wear jackets in the winter. If I know a lot of guys that don't. So I didn't think it was that strong. And it seemed to me like a juror definitely agreed with that because he was laughing and nodding his head.
I mean, look, if it's like below 50, we don't leave the house down here. So I can't contribute a whole lot to this conversation.
I mean, I'm freezing cold in the winter all the time. I wear like the thickest winter jacket. I look ridiculous. And I mean, I just found it kind of preposterous. I mean, it just, to me, basic detective work. If I saw that, I would just be like, it probably came out from that house. I mean, would make sense to me. I mean, I don't know. Maz, what do you think? Do you not wear a coat in the winter?
I wear usually like a hoodie
and
a heavy winter jacket, pants, boots, gloves, a winter hat. And I liked how Alan Jackson countered the whole thing. He goes, well, I wear shorts year round. And Alan Jackson goes, in 18-degree weather, for example? He's like, he just completely called him on that, in 18-degree weather. When I go for a walk, I walk a lot. When I go for my later walks in the late fall around November, once the weather's below around 40 degrees, I'm bundled up, completely bundled up when I go for those walks in that kind of weather. And this guy's out here joking around. Oh, I don't really wear shorts. It's like Alan had him. I talked with someone that was also in court today. I won't say the name just for privacy purposes, but we had a conversation about this guy, Tully, and his just blatant deadpan. He was just looking right at Alan Jackson's face. And you could just tell, like, he could tell that Alan Jackson could see right through him, but he was trying to present the facade that he was telling the truth to try to fool the jury. And it was just like, dude, most people. I mean, the people that I've known in my life that wear shorts and no jackets and weather like that, are one of my buddies who's real big and tough. He's strong. He's muscular. He's huge. Okay. John O'Keefe, I don't know what his build is compared to mine, but I'm a big guy. Okay. And I get cold easily. That's all I'm going to say. So this whole thing about John not wearing any heavy clothing, I mean, even for a second or two, I mean, it's like, why would he not? And then I think the biggest thing that Alan Jackson got today was the shoe dragging off while being pulled. Is that usually, when you get pulled, the shoe would, and that's exactly where the shoe would pop off, because in the back of the heel's down, that's where the dislodging point is, and that shoe comes right off. I thought he absolutely got him there.
Yeah, I think he tried to whittle his way out, but it almost looked at some points like Tully was almost smiling, like they were kind of playing this game back and forth. Like I don't know, I saw it a couple times where Tully was like, "I'm going to try to outmatch you," because I think he knew that he was going to be up. I think Proctor was puttying Jackson's hands. I think, in my opinion, Tully gave him a little bit more of a fight. I think he was ready for it. I think Proctor, knowing what Proctor said and how bad it was going to make him look in court, he kind of melted a little bit. But I think Tully had a little bit more of a stance. And I almost kind of saw like a sarcastic smirk from him at some point.
Yeah.
That was just some of my observations.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I actually, again, trying to be objective, which we all know how I feel about this case, but I actually think that Tully was a better witness for the Commonwealth than Proctor. He seemed more genuine and more relaxed, more believable, even though, I mean, I think the defense did a great job of poking holes in everything he said. Proctor just never seemed believable. He seemed mortified when they finally got things out of him. The relentless conversation. Another thing too, just to get it in before I forget it, you notice that when these witnesses speak to Lally on the redirect, they are more animated and they get lively. The witnesses that are either lying or are in on this whole thing, I think that is far more dramatic when they get the redirect from Lally. Their demeanor is very different. The ones that are putting up the defense are the ones that are involved in some way. Just think about the people who, like Barros, for example, he was even keeled and even toned when he spoke, right? And then you have all of these other people that are like, I wouldn't say that aren't like the most important witnesses, but the forensics, they're not defensive. They're just coming there to state facts.
Do their job.
There's no change in demeanor, but obviously we had Jen McCabe, who was super defensive on her cross-examination. It's almost like if you just, I think after the fact, we go back and look at everybody's demeanors with these people. It's the ones that are defensive are the ones that are in on it. I know that seems like it might be obvious,
I agree.
But I noticed it a lot today and yesterday with Proctor, with the Lally. It's just very palpable how different they are.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let me just read this really quick, and then I want to talk about the DNA that came up today. That was very interesting. Paige says, I appreciate your donation pledge. It's admirable in finally catching a live to tell you. Thanks for all that you do for your endless coverage too. Mazza, I love when you get fired up with Lally and the witnesses. End of the show. End of the show. Let's talk a little bit about this DNA today. So you had Andre Porto on the stand, and he was the one that found, what was it, 3 sources of DNA or 2 sources of DNA and John's DNA on, what was it, the taillight, John's clothing, and his shoes?
The glass, I think.
Glass.
The glass, and I think a pair of shoes as well too. Interesting. 2 unknown source DNAs. What did everybody think about that when they heard that? I'll start with Jess.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, all of the witnesses for this particular part of testimony, I could barely hear. Lally is too quiet. The witnesses were too quiet. If you're watching from home, I'm sure you could hear it better. Towards the end, I actually cut out early. And the main reason I said, I'm just going to listen in my car. I really couldn't hear. I think a couple of years of radio, wearing headphones and talking is just doing a thing. But I will say this. There was a part of the testimony where they said that John's DNA was on the taillight, right? And Sue O'Connell and I were walking out for lunch because that had occurred just before the break. And Sue and I were saying, for something that I think is an important piece for the Commonwealth to say, John's DNA was on the... It was almost like you didn't hear it. He should have made it a bigger deal. It should have been more impactful when he asked the question and then when it was answered. It was almost like, wait, did I hear that right? Did we catch that? And I always say, if I'm feeling that way, so is at least a juror. And I thought that was an important piece for the Commonwealth. And it was almost like you didn't even hear it.
Brandi, what'd you think when you heard it? The 2 unsourced. What started going through your mind?
I think that it's one of those things where it's like, if it had been, and I mentioned this today to my people when we were watching, I say my people, my cult. Okay. We were talking about this today in chat because there were also the 2 unknown sources. And it could be anybody. It could be, I said it could be one of the kids. It could be, like whoever, whatever. But the fact that there were 2 other ones along with his kind of made it less of that. Somebody just screamed in the hallway. It's like, everybody, vacationers are here and going crazy all day. They've been drunk since like noon. Joy of living in Florida. But anyway, having the extra profiles on there, it was kind of like, instead of being like, oh, this was the DNA that was on there, it's like, yeah, this one and this one and this one. And it's not that surprising to have the extra or to have the DNA on there from him, because it is, think about how many times like you're walking through the garage and you know, touch your car, or you shut the taillight or not the taillight, the tailgate or whatever. Yeah. So that part is not, to me, having the other 2 profiles on there made it less like of a gotcha type of moment that I think that they were maybe hoping for. But I also agree with Jess. They don't, Lally, when he has the things that he could work to his advantage, you miss it because he's a dial tone.
Do you think he just understands he's screwed at this point and he's just kind of thrown in the towel? I think he has. I mean, but you know what? I'll tell you this though. The very, very interesting that I noticed today, and maybe you all noticed, and maybe Jess and Maz noticed it. So we've been kind of calling him out. I know, especially here, like how clean the defense table looks, and they have their laptops and their notebooks and a phone. It's all organized. He was actually organized today. Like I noticed that. Like his evidence books were together. He had his notepads together, and I'm like, I'm wondering if he's watching these lives and knowing that we're calling him out, you know? Because I noticed. Because the day I went, it was the funniest thing. Like he literally walks in the court like he looks like this. Jess, you've probably seen him a couple times. He literally walks in like this, like he's a fifth grader that his backpack like blown out and trying to get his books together to get and run to class because the bell.
I saw him coming from outside. I'm already upstairs when he was coming in, so I'm looking out the window and he's walking on the sidewalk with just like the thing. I actually did notice about the table though today. There was one point where he was sifting through something and it was like a file, and I'm going, good for you.
Stepped it up. I will say this though. Alan Jackson today, to me, seemed a little off. There was some documents that he had trouble that it didn't seem like he was quite prepared for when he got some questions back from Tully. So today, I kind of felt like something was off a little bit. And listen, they're not going to be on every day. I think he did overall a phenomenal job. But like getting some of the documentation when he was questioned about it, there was some answers that Tully asked about, and he said, "Oh, it did say that, or it was that date, or whatever." Did you get a sense of that, Jess and Maz?
Well, Maz, I know that you were there when that was going on. So this was the part of the testimony where they were trying to talk about the taillight, and that in the original report that he reported, there was only one piece of a clear taillight, and he was questioning his report and saying, was there only one, right? But that the day before they pulled out two pieces of the clear taillight out of the bag, and they did not actually have that printed. So during he asked for the morning break. He looked at his watch. He's like, would this be a good time to take a break? He said, I don't want to waste the jurors' time. So they took a break. But immediately after they left the room, the team started to get together. Yeah. Karen was actually on her computer looking for what he was looking for before they took the break. And it was within a few seconds, they had it printed out and they brought it back over and they were ready to go.
Yeah, I stayed in for the break too. I didn't leave the courtroom. I was still in there, and I kind of just watched them all. You know what's crazy is that I just I was so just like caught up in just the whole courtroom thing. Like when I had that break, I just didn't leave. I'm like, I want to see what goes on in this courtroom when it's, there's a recess going on. And I saw them get pretty organized pretty quickly. So I think that was actually a smooth move by Alan Jackson, though, because because he seemed a little bit, not fully prepared. I won't say lack of preparation, but not fully prepared. And he did find a nice way to just pivot, get a recess, use the break, come back, use the time, recenter themselves and kind of get that going as well. And I guess that happens. I think probably too, one of the things that might be affecting them as a defense team just a little bit is probably just they came off the Michael Proctor cross this particular week, and maybe they were a little bit more over prepared for him. And then maybe there was, you know how you get so prepared for, it's like when you're in school and you have multiple projects due and you focus on the ones that are like the bigger ones, but then there's something else, and you maybe miss like one little detail or something. Like it was more like that. It was just probably just a little bit. They seemed to rebound from that and recover pretty well, though. I thought
that was a very actual important part of the testimony. It showed that aside from Proctor, now you had Tully, who wrote a report that was not indicative of what was testified in court, and was not what was actually in the evidence bag. And you also had the testimony there for the minute prior to the break where he denied that he had written it was just one. And, I have to give Alan Jackson credit, and it's really attributed to the real stellar type of attorneys these guys are. He's so immersed in this that he was able to really very carefully move through that testimony where I think another attorney could have gotten tripped up by Tully, and you know what I mean? But he's so on point. He's like, nope, we're going to back it up. And there was a minute where I think he made a mistake about the colors, right, of the thing. And he stopped, he paused. And I always say, if I can follow it, the jurors can follow it. And I think they were following it. And I think that testimony is important. They're saying in your report that you had one piece of clear glass and two pieces of red, but in the bag, we have two pieces of clear and three pieces of red. Where did those two extra pieces come from? It's and this whole thing revolves around the taillight. And so I think that was really important testimony. I'm really impressed with Jackson, as always, that he was able to navigate through that successfully. And you're right, Maz, after the break pivoted properly, and it didn't seem like they were really disorganized at all once they came back from the break. And I think jurors forgot about it. So yeah, it was good.
One thing I always love about him too is that I say like he plays the wheel. So like he'll get a witness and he'll get them on the stand, and let's just say like, you know, he's trying to get out of that witness. He's trying to get that witness to say like, could it be a possibility that I'm just throwing something out. Could it be a possibility that they went inside the house? And he may not get that on the first line of questioning. And then he will ask another series of questions that lead back to his original thought. And then he gets it. And then you can see him kind of move on. I call it kind of the wheel that he plays, you know, that his part plays. And I think he's masterful at it. And he always gets the information that he needs to get out of these witnesses and get it on the record. And it's just, it's pure, like just sheer brilliance to watch. And it's pretty cool. Let me just read this question really quick. Courtney B, and anybody can answer this. I'll read it, throw it out there. Since the glass only had John's DNA on it, do you think the defense will use that to suggest the glass was from inside the house rather than the bar, since presumably it didn't have Karen Reed's DNA on it? Whoever wants to answer it, go for it. Your thoughts? Brandi?
I don't personally think so, only because, I mean, they could, you know, I don't know, but me looking at it, I wouldn't say so, because I know that they had one of the back about 14 business weeks ago when we had the bartender testifying, you know, that came in and said something about the glassware there. So I don't think so. And also that, you know, we do know that he had a glass in his hand when he was in the parking lot. We saw it on the video. So I think that if they did try to say that it was inside, I think that it may come across as trying to reach, because then if they do that, then they have to explain, well, where's the other glass, you know, that was in his hand in the video. So it's an extra detail that I think that they don't necessarily need to try to pursue, because they have plenty to work with, you know, with their doubt. So
oh yeah, I agree. Let's see. And then we had we heard about Lucky Loughran, Tully saying that he didn't want to follow up because he felt that Lucky's statements had changed and it was very inconsistent. I found that almost to be hilarious. Yeah, I almost found that to be hilarious. And I can't, you know, I just, you know, he said he wasn't credible because his statements changed too much. And I'm like,
if that was the case, then we would only have like 4 witnesses instead of 87 or whatever it is. So, I mean, that's not really. And also, something that frustrates me about that comment was that the statement that he made in February, it was February 14th, right? So, if I have the date wrong, you know, correct me, please. But I believe it was February 14th when he did the meeting with the investigator. So the time that he's giving at that time is, it's not a surprise that he's off by 30 minutes to an hour when he's recalling this 2 years later when they finally get around to talking to him. And when he pointed out in that interview with the I was about to say with the proctors, bless it, with the troopers, he even said when they asked him what time, he specifically said, I think it was in the transcript, it was only like just a few lines above that he's, you know, he's not positive on time. At this point, it's been so long, so now he's trying to recall these things that were fresh in his mind then. So it's not surprising that it's off, and it's not off by a huge amount. So that was one of those, oh gosh, when he said something about, oh yeah, the statements weren't consistent. I just wanted to start throwing things at that point. I'll be honest, my Southern temper came out and I just wanted to start throwing things because it was so ridiculous.
I think you have to, I think you have to protect Lucky at all costs right now. I don't know if he's in a hotel room with a guard, but I think after that testimony today, where you heard Tully say, and I think Aiden had said it best, that it was almost like it was too suggestive that they said, is it that? And he said, yeah, it's that, that we couldn't further move on that because it was too suggestive. I mean, I think what's going to happen, and I think just from what we know, Lucky is going to be a tremendous witness. We heard outside of court yesterday, right, where Alan Jackson was asked about this meeting in a parking lot that Yannetti had, right? So which it was true. The pictures going around the internet and you're thinking, is that really actually Yannetti? And then, in this interview that Aiden asks him, and he's like, yeah, it is me. Actually, we're talking to, our witnesses. I think that in that interview, Jackson says, he doesn't care. He lives in that town. He's not going to be bullied. So he's already kind of set for us. And we were hoping the jurors aren't looking at that kind of stuff. And they're not on the internet. They're not watching us right now. That I think they're confident that he is going to be one of those witnesses, like the DPW guy, where he's just like a townie and he's here to tell the truth. And then the jurors are going to hear that testimony. And then they're going to remember that Tully was having the same conversation with him about the Ford Edge, and Tully didn't want to believe this guy when he's probably going to sound very believable in the courtroom. It's a double whammy. And I actually can't wait for him to be on the stand, because I think it's going to be really damaging testimony. And and we can talk about this even further, at what point, do you say, there's enough evidence here to believe there's like third party culpability? Like they haven't even really expanded on that yet. Yes, it's framed and all of these things, but now you're going to start putting the Ford Edge there. Maybe you're going to put together who owns the Ford Edge and all of these pieces. I think they've got an opportunity to like kind of parlay that into something else. But I think that testimony, and then also what happened in the courtroom when Proctor started to get animated and talk about that in the parking lot. Listen, the defense was not having it. I've never seen them. They're over at sidebar. I could hear them. They were so loud and so animated. They're very protective of their reputations, and they weren't going to allow that to happen. And then, of course, as you know, Bev was very clear when the jury came back. She was like, you are not to consider any of that. If you wrote it in your notebooks, you need to erase it, cross it out. Do not consider it. It is all for not to be considered. So that whole piece, I think, is all going to come together when you finally get Lucky at the stand. And I think he's going to be a tremendous witness for the defense.
Yeah, it's I don't even think it's going to have to be that long of testimony either. I think it's going to be very quick, like we've been seeing a lot of these expert witnesses, especially today. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think after Tully, it kind of lost me a little bit. I kind of knew what the formality was going to be when they were up. And then you had the defense just like, no questions. I mean, they're just doing their job. Like Jess was saying at the beginning of the show today. I mean, they're just there to say what they did, what they processed. I don't think it links any of them to what went on at 34 Fairview. I mean, they're processing evidence and just doing their job. So and then we heard about the missing 2 minutes, and here we go, another coincidence that he said that Lally says in courts today. Apparently every camera in Canton is motion activated. I mean, y'all in Canton have motion activated cameras for some reason. He said, well, the reason that it didn't catch it is because it was motion activated, but yet there wasn't like traffic that was passing by at certain times. I mean, come on. I mean, Brandi,
and when they were when they were like in the Sally Port moving around, but it motion activated. And look, I get it. Like motion activated cameras, like they can have those little like glitches and whatever. And I get that, but bro, you're missing a whole 40 something minutes. And like that's while you're bringing the car in. That's not just like a glitch. That's an issue is what that is. So I think it's very different. And it's one of those things that, if it was just that one thing by itself, it might not be something that you look at like, oh, this is, that's suspicious, but the fact that it's just, one more big meatball of suspicion on your big old meatball of suspicion or what? Oh, I heard the buffet. My people keep saying the buffet of reasonable doubt. Is that what they're calling it?
Yeah.
Calling it. So everybody in my chat was, I guess, heard that and was repeating it, today and yesterday too.
Take your pick.
The buffet of reasonable doubt. So it's another one of those things that just it's by itself it could be one of those things where you're just like, okay, well, that's just like a weird thing, a weird one-off that happened. But when you put it with all of these other tons and tons of things, it's just one more. It's one more of all the things.
I want to try to get Alan Jackson, I think, said something outside of court today. I think I got it. What did he say?
I haven't had a chance to see any of this yet.
Let's play this. Alan Jackson outside court today.
They're really harping on the fact that obviously crude behavior and language was used, but that the integrity was not jeopardized here.
This might have been yesterday.
Do you think that's possible?
No, integrity, the definition of integrity, which is why I asked, do you even know the definition of integrity? It means honesty. It means something more than just, you get away with an apology when you engage in that kind of crude conduct. This
it's yesterday.
has no integrity. He has no integrity. And the fact that the Massachusetts State Police have not fired him means they have no integrity.
Woo,
They're really harping on the fact that...
This is crazy. I mean, do you think that I sit here and I'm like, all right, so you just had a Massachusetts State Police lead detective up on the stand. You find out that he says all this vile crap about people that he's investigating a case. I mean, how do you go back to your office and is everybody in there going, is his coworkers going, and they're pushing it off? Or are people like really standing back and going, this guy is like a real piece of dirt? I mean, I know we can only speculate, but I'm like, how do you think that his female coworkers feel now, knowing that he was talking like that?
Well, look at people like Coffindeffer, saying like, oh, well, he just has that's just his sense of humor or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. So I assume that some of them, would probably, maybe it would probably be the same way. Like some of them kind of excuse it away, especially those who've been involved in those texts. But I think it's gross.
I talked about this on my wrap up on my drive home after court yesterday. I'm not so offended by the word. I'm not offended by men that use that word. I've talked about this in the past where, as a woman, I've been called that by a man before. And I think it stung the first time, right? It stings. And it's like, but I use that word frequently in humorous situations, talking. I mean, I hate to say it. It's part of my kind of vocabulary in my social circle, right? And because of it, it has no value. You know what I mean? A man will never be able to use that word towards me and it hurt the way that they want it to hurt. So I think look at this a little bit differently. When he talked about integrity, I've always thought about this. Integrity to me means how you act when nobody is looking. When you think nobody is looking, how are you acting? Are you doing the right thing, even when nobody will ever know? And that is why those text messages were being sent that way. They never thought anybody would know. There's no way a state trooper doesn't know and has not had to deal with an investigation with texts and phones. I mean, that stuff. He never expected that those texts were going to be seen by the light of day, let alone millions of people. And when no one was looking, he didn't have the integrity. He didn't have it. So that lends to the kind of person that he is. And then you just start thinking about, well, this is the guy in charge of the investigation. What a loser. You know what I mean? Like he's a loser. I can't believe the statement his wife put out. I can't believe she doubled down on it. I mean, they're newly married, I guess. Like they've got young kids and things like that. I would venture to say if this was 10 years into the marriage, no woman is standing by her man after they are publicly embarrassed like this, especially the part about looking for nudes and stuff. No way. I mean, I got to give it to Lizzie. She's standing by him and she's publicly going out there and supporting him. And then also, playing the victim. They're victims, right? And, it's probably very helpful to him right now in the worst time of his life, when he looks like an absolute pathetic piece of crap, that he at least has one person that's got his back. And, that's a good wife, I guess.
What do you all right, so let me pose this question. What do you think happens? And I'll throw this out for the panel. Anybody can answer it. What do you think happens? Obviously, they're not going to fire him right now because he's the lead detective in this case. So they're not going to fire him now. What do you think happens? Do you think that, let's say the Commonwealth wins, okay, and they win, Karen goes to jail, do they just smooth this over and Proctor stays? Or do you think they have to get rid of, and it's kind of a loaded question, do you think they have to get rid of him? Or if, let's say, Karen Reed is innocent, not convicted, they come hard and they fire this guy? you know where I'm kind of going with this question. I think Jess knows.
But they have to fire him because he admitted on the stand that he drove drunk in his cruiser.
Right.
Yeah.
At a minimum. Or
right.
I mean, he should already be suspended for that. He testified to it.
Insane. They haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Not even a statement, nothing. But I don't think they're going to fire him right now because he's active in this trial. I mean, I'll
let everybody else answer, but there was a couple of things that happened yesterday and today with state troopers that some people have a theory on. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Brandi. What do you think? They keep him around or they fire him? They should fire him. I think
they should. I mean, now it's like we're already hearing about, talking about looking into other, cases that like people are already talking about looking into other cases and stuff that he's involved in. And I think how do you bounce back from that? And then think about it. There's a lot of attention on it too. So if you're doing something and it's Proctor that's coming to investigate you, all you have to do is kind of question the credibility of, anything. And
someone else here.
Yeah.
Just put him on a desk job. That's it. He's working like nights Higgins. And he's working at the desk.
Yeah. Like Higgins.
Yeah.
Another one. Jeez.
And see, and I said this last night when I popped on for a minute, like the calling the C word and stuff like that was not as offensive to me as the comments about her medical stuff.
Condition.
That's right. Yeah.
That was the part that to me was just slimy and just trashy. And I that's the part to me.
And then you have to go, how the hell did you know this 16 hours into an investigation? And you go, well, who did he talk to? I think it was Jen McCabe told him a whole bunch of stuff. That's who I think it was, because she is the one that was running the table. I'm telling you, she was running it. She was running all this, and I guarantee you, she was the one that spoke to him. What do you think, Maz?
More probable than not. That particular individual has been basically all over the place talking to everybody, as was seen in a lot of that footage early in the morning on January 29th. It's that's particularly evident. I just want to go back on Proctor. He should have been fired a long time ago, and it's really shame on the state police for allowing him to be here. I think they had said they had suspended him or put him on leave or whatever they did a couple months ago, but that's just not sufficient. And going forward, it's especially after what's already dropped in court. I think probably what's going to happen if the state police do make the right decision, which is firing him, I think we might have to wait till the end of this case for that to come through. And I'm concerned that if I don't think Karen Reed's going to be found guilty. I'll just say that with 100% certainty. Yeah. But if for any reason she was found guilty, I wonder if they would just not fire him at all and just suspend him for some kind of misconduct. But ultimately, I think the state police are doing the right thing here. If they intend to do that at a later time, fine. But I would say he should be fired without even a second hesitation about that. You just can't have somebody on the state police or any police department that's acting that way and conducting themselves that way. It's inexcusable. It violates public trust. And that's the big issue here. And that goes right down to what's going on in Canton, Massachusetts right now. It's just the public trust is like the biggest thing right now. And, I was talking with a few people today throughout the course of the day. Yeah, exactly. Brian Walsh and a few people today. And that's what we were talking about a lot is public trust. Karen and this whole saga has been about what it's been about, but there's been a lot of questions. This case has raised a lot of questions in the justice system, as well as the way towns are run and local police stations are run. And, it's of the essence that we fight for Karen and her freedom, but it's also of the essence that we it's like anything when something bad happens, it's important that you don't forget that and you do act on it. It's the same thing here. We're here to fight for Karen. We're here to fight for her freedom, but also there's another fight as well that's involved, and that's essentially the public trust issues that are going on right now. And I think that's been a big issue on a lot of people's minds, in this particular case as well, is that what's happening here is that this particular incident, this particular case has put a spotlight on these other issues that are now also needing to be addressed. And, it makes you question a lot of things. How many people has Michael Proctor arrested or investigated and thrown behind bars? And how many of those people should be released because of maybe did he plant anything on them? Was there a cover-up involved in that?
I think that.
Yeah. Oh, they're all contacting their attorneys from
jail. Oh yeah.
I was just thinking that today. Like I'm driving home from being out, and I'm like, oh my God, if he's done this here, and it's proven that he's done this here, and it's leaning towards he's done this here. What other stuff has he done in other cases? And then, like, there's just the scary thing for me is Brian Walsh. I'm like, because I don't know, I just feel very strong, just all of the evidence that was put together, and no, and that guy was a sick son of a bitch. I mean, he was Google searching on his son's iPad how to kill your wife and how to bury, get rid of a body, and I'm like, that's a maniac. It's a sick dude. And now knowing that he's involved in that, I'm like, well, did he do stuff in that case too? And it's just,
well, I mean, you don't even have to look too far. I mean, he was involved in Aiden's arrest.
Yep.
Tully and Proctor were involved in that as well. I mean, so you don't even have to look beyond that. I mean, and obviously that whole case is still going to go on after this, but they're involved in that as well. So, I mean, the whole thing is very, like incestuous when it comes to Proctor and what he has his hands in. Do we not have any more state trooper detectives? Like, I mean, like I should tell my son he should go to school and get a job, because it's like his hand is touching everything. I mean, look at the Sandra Birchmore case. You've got you've got Canton cops that are involved in that case as well. Wild.
Yep. Breezy, thanks for becoming a new member. Yeah, and I mean, that's something that we heard back in March. I think the last information we heard about Sandra Birchmore was the FBI was looking into this case. That was back in March. We haven't heard anything. So I'm like, are they waiting for something here to come out of this case, and then they're going to reopen it and look? Like, I haven't heard anything. Anything.
Well, you haven't heard anything because that case is not getting the attention that this case got. That case hasn't, and I think it's just started, doesn't have Aiden Carney on it. That's what got this case moving. And, again, I don't like when people kind of try to discredit him. And, some people are like, I'm a big cheerleader for him. I have every reason not to be. We've gone over this, right? He did a hit piece on me. I have every reason to not be, but you're crazy to not think that this case got the attention and the eyes on it, and the investigating, and the people, the internet putting in their 2 cents and looking at things because of him. Any case that he touches, I think, is going to get that same type of attention. And I hope eventually he pivots away from, when this is over, and moves to the Sandra Birchmore case. Because that case right there, and I don't want to spend too much time on that. That girl didn't kill herself. No, she was killed by a cop. And it was covered up. And there are cops in this investigation that are in that investigation too. And I hope that justice occurs for her eventually as well, as I know it will for Karen. Listen, there's at least one juror on that jury that believes she didn't do it. And that's all you need is one for this whole thing to be over. That's it.
That's exactly right. And I can confirm that too. And just getting back to what I said earlier, I listen to you a lot, Jess, and your insight about this case has been awesome from the press box. And I kind of had some of the thoughts of things you said kind of mentally in my head. And I was kind of like looking around, like thinking of that, some of the things you said, and kind of comparing what you've said and looking at it and seeing it for myself. And I absolutely agree. And I feel I like the jury. Like, I looked at these people, and because we always stand up for the jury, they all walk in, you see them all. And, I said to myself, these are good quality people. These are all like good, nice people. They all seem to have good character. They all seem smart. There's nobody in there that seems like they're, they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know how to quantify and come to a conclusion on something. So I was very pleased with these individuals. It's amazing when the jury walked in, because for me, never being in a court case of this stature, or any court, I don't know if I've even been in another court case. Actually, I don't think I have, but I saw the jury walk in. It's like, you always like think of them as like invisible beings that you just can't see or possibly imagine. Then they walk in, and it's just like, wow, these are just like everyday, casual, typical people, just like everybody else in this particular room. And sometimes I feel bad for them, because they're there by, they're called to be there and selected to be there. But I have good faith in these individuals. I do. I think that they're all smart. And like I said, when I was glancing at each of them throughout the course of the day, I felt like all of them were attentive, except when Adam Lally was maybe talking. But I thought that they all seemed to be like people I felt that I would, if I was in Karen's situation and that was the jury, I'd feel like that jury would make an educated decision with my fate hanging in the balance. I think that they could come to a calculated decision. And like Jess's point, you can guarantee at least one of them is for Karen. I mean, that's clear as day. And I think the person I mentioned earlier just immediately said, "I know who you're talking about." I'm like, "Yes, I knew you would." I was like, "I knew you would," because that individual is obviously,
Yes,
on our side.
I agree.
Bungalow has a question. They say, "Do you think the jury really doesn't look up on the case? If it was me, I would just on someone else's phone or computer."
I have a blatant answer for that. This is my thing, is they only have to answer whether or not they've researched the case every morning. No, 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 no. That's it. But the thing is this is the information age, and curiosity is a common thing in people's heads. Now, do I think all of them? No, but there has to be, because I mean, people, you got your phone. I mean, as soon as you go on your phone, there's always gonna be something you're gonna walk away from at the end of the day that lingers in your head, and you're gonna be like, well, what about that? Let me look something up about that. So I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for them, but I could say that I would probably say that it's possible. But and
I
then
remember. Go
yeah.
ahead, Evans, and I'm going to
Yeah,
interject here.
yeah,
Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
would say it's possible. I mean, because I just
Yeah.
think, like, with human beings, it's like, how can I mean, I don't think it's possible this day and age for any jury to not have people that, I'm not saying that they're feverishly, I'm not making any suggestions, but
Right.
I wouldn't be, if we found out like, oh, a couple of them were, I mean, I don't know. I'm not, now I wouldn't say that I think that any of them were like, oh, we knew about the case beforehand. I mean, that's highly possible, because, someone like myself had come across the news, and if I have many friends that don't know much about it, not friends, but I say acquaintances. A little joke there. But
Oh,
Yeah.
but
I
you
see what you mean.
eventually, you have people that probably don't know about the case, right? So initially, but I'd
Right.
imagine some point some of these people might have jumped on their phone, but don't quote me. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I remember hearing during the OJ case, because they had the jurors actually staying at like a motel. They were all at this mutual motel. And every morning, I think just for like the first maybe week or so, that when the newspaper was getting dropped in front of their door, they had like people literally running through the hallways to grab the newspapers. And eventually, like, they had to stop that, of course. But I found that kind of be funny, like, to think about that the only way that we had information back then was you had to either watch the 5 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news, or you got a newspaper in the morning. And like Maz said, I mean, literally, you pick up your phone, you might be in a certain area, you walk out, you go on Facebook, and you're seeing Karen Reed articles. It's just geo fencing everything.
So someone made a great point. They said, I don't think that the jury talks to each other. I agree with that as well. I think that
Yeah.
that's almost 100% unlikely. And then I think ultimately it's like, like you said, how do you now, especially with phones these days, if you start talking about Cheetos and Doritos in a conversation, and then 20 minutes later you go on social media and there's a Cheetos and Doritos advertisement on your phone. I mean, if they're talking about Karen Reed all day, and I'm coming home from the Karen Reed trial, and they mentioned this while they're driving home. Hey, look at that guy.
This is Karen outside of court today. Let's hear this really quick and see what she said.
That's all they proved.
I almost had to catch Kirsten here because she trips on one of those orange right there. She keeps tripping so hard. I was like, I put my arm forward.
How are you feeling about how this is going so far?
Really well, really well. It's a relief. All the hard work we've done and everything we've uncovered is finally coming to light.
Thank you.
Thank you. John's DNA is on John's clothes. That's all they proved.
And have you made a decision about if you're going to be testifying?
I haven't. I'll do whatever is required. It's up to the attorneys.
Wow.
How are you feeling about how this is going so far?
Really well, really well. It's a relief. All the hard work we've done and everything we've uncovered is finally coming to light.
Do I hear a Fall River accent there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jess, I got to get your reaction to that. What did you think about that comment you made?
I was actually surprised that that's a thing. I mean, I'm down here, you know what I mean? I grew up here, so I get it. But I'm surprised that cops up there, like, I don't know, like, distinguish it as something. I don't know. I mean, I've heard Karen talk. She does have a very distinct style of talking, and I think it's great. I'm surprised, like, they didn't think it was cute or attractive. I think it's like a charming characteristic that she has. I think she's a likable person. Like, I've said this before, with all of these people outside. What if this were the opposite? What if these were people out there protesting her and holding signs and calling her a murderer. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, think about that. There are people that have had that experience. They've had people that are accused of murder that are hearing it from people outside and yelling. And this is just the opposite of that. And I think it's because she's cute, she's pretty, she's charming, she's well-spoken. And the other thing too, not lost on me, is she has a family that supports her so much.
Mm-hmm.
They are there every single solitary day. She has a friend that is coordinating, Mazza, as you know, supporters to continuously come in and be there. The O'Keefe side of the courtroom is pretty consistent with who's there. There's occasionally a person or two that switches out, and then, you know, they come back in, and it's the same characters. But on Karen's side, there's like a waiting list to get into the courtroom to support her. And I just think that, you know, who she is and the character of who she is, and just learning more about her, you know, it doesn't seem like it's even in her to do something like this, you know. And I think, you know, when I hear her talking, she just seems like a likable person. I don't know.
I 100,000,000,000% agree. I will tell you, after I met her parents last month and her brother, and I met Karen much more formally today. And the only word I can think of that perfectly exemplifies her character is she is a true gem. She is the most genuine individual. I don't want to say the most, because I think many people are the most. So I'll say top tier in terms of gems. She is so kind. She is so caring. She is so mentally sharp, smart, focused, and balanced that it's, even when I met her mother last month, I was like, there is no way that the daughter of this wonderful woman, Mrs. Reed, would blatantly kill anyone.
Her mom is great.
And these people are so nice, so friendly. I will tell you this much. They are so friendly and so outgoing that they make me think of people from my own family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, siblings, you know, just friendly people that are your family members. Like they bring, you know, when I was there today, you get treated like your family. And this is not, and I don't want to share too much about what me and her spoke about briefly when we got to speak today, but you know, they're extremely genuine individuals. They're earnest, good people. And there is nothing about her at any moment, or her family at any moment, that ever makes me sit there and say, maybe I was wrong and she is guilty. There's nothing. It's not a hint at all. It only, an individual like myself, and I've said this many times across multiple platform shows, whatever. And this goes back to when I first appeared at court last month for the first time. Today was my second trip. When you believe Karen Reed is innocent, and most people's stories are usually the same. You know, I learned about the story, I looked into the story, and after about a couple days or hours, I determined that I believe she was innocent, right? As innocent as you believe that she is, when you meet her family and you meet her, even though you already have 100% certainty that she is innocent, it only goes up even more, because you find it more and more impossible that this woman has a violent bone in her from a premeditated or explosive murdering aspect. Now, I'm not talking about like a self-defense mechanism. I'm talking about like this individual would just go off and just take out somebody. There is none of that. There is, you know, when I always say, when people are willing, and I said this, I'll just say this. I've said it multiple times to multiple people. The moment when I first heard about the story, it was because of Turtle Boy. And when I saw that video of Karen and her defense team on those stairs a year ago, when they were talking to the press that she was innocent, that was the time where Carl Dougal tried to challenge it. And Karen goes, "We're the only one that did something," and everyone starts clapping. It was that video that made me sit there and say, I'm watching something that I don't commonly ever see at all. You don't see someone that is on trial for murder and her attorneys standing on the steps of a courthouse not pleading with the public to believe them, but telling the public that she is innocent and we're going to fight this. And that's that. It's always, they're usually on the defense. It's usually like you sit there on some murder trials. I'm like, yeah, that person's keeping quiet because they did it. They know they did it, and their attorneys know they're screwed, so they don't want them to say anything. This was the opposite. This was an outright, come on, the Commonwealth, these cops, they did this. We know we're innocent. When I sat there, that raised my eyebrow to the point where I had to start looking into this case, and I just couldn't turn back. And Scott McGinnis was tuning in here. Me and Scott had a conversation. Scott, if you don't mind me sharing, I'll summarize it briefly. When I met Scott last month, we were talking outside that church area, and Scott made the comment to me, once you go open that door and you go down that road, there's no turning back. And it's an absolute fact. Once you follow this story, and this is why this story has had so many people that consistently follow along and don't drop off, because it's so compelling that you just can't help but, want to know more about it and fight for it and believe in it. I met a woman today from the UK. There were another couple from the UK recently that came out. People believe in this so strongly. You look at the price of a ticket for a plane. It's tough to take a plane trip to Chicago or Dallas or Miami, and these people are coming all the way across the pond just to be here for this. And it's just an incredible story. And, we have many people on this show, and we've all come to this differently, and we all come from different paths to be here. And it's just, we all believe in it because it's just, it's so blatantly obvious that this woman is innocent. And Karen, to her character, just to kind of wrap here, she's a woman of incredible character. And, there was a question asked to Michael Proctor, would you trust Julie Albert to babysit your kids? Well, I'm sure most of the people in this movement would trust Karen Reed to babysit their kids. And I'll leave it there.
I agree. Let's do this. I'm just going to read off a couple more super chats. It's getting late. I know all of you have had late days. Mazza, Brandi, Jess, I'm tired. I'm going to get up early tomorrow and go down to the courthouse, but we'll end this here in a couple of minutes. I just want to get through this, and I want to thank everybody for doing this panel tonight. I appreciate you. And Jess, you've been a powerhouse. You've been here the last, 3 weeks now, checking in with us, giving us some updates, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you. And Brandi, thanks for jumping up with us the first time here and hanging out with our crew over here. And, it's really nice that you get to connect. And I'm just been bringing up, if I see other creators in the room, just jump on and hang out. Let's hear your perspective. And I have Kurt from Uncivil Law in here, and he was up on the panel once, and I've met so many great people through this movement. And, just having the opportunities that I've had and the things that I've done and been able to do, it's been a very proud moment in my life. And look, we're not at the end yet, and we can't quite celebrate yet because we don't know what's inside the jury's heads. I mean, we can only speculate and we can only lean a certain way in the way that we feel, and everybody has that right to do that. But at the bottom line, I just want to make this very, very clear. As all of the evidence comes out, the bottom line, it's going to come down to the jurors, and they're going to have to make that decision. And hopefully they make the right decision. Let me just do this really quick. Lady Law, Sandra, thank you so much for being here. Member, moderator, said, considering all your experiences as a layperson, how would you approach investigating a wrongful death case closed by the police, which they are unwilling to handle and refuse to answer questions about?
I got you on that one. I got you. So there was a death of an 18-year-old. I think I mentioned this somewhere along the past. There's a death of an 18-year-old high school student in New Bedford in January of this year. And the way it was reported originally by mainstream media was he was in a car accident with another woman. He was 18. The woman was 44. And he died, and she was critically injured. And that was all you got. And I got a tip from somebody that there was more to this story to dig in. And the way you get around that is by publicly putting it out and letting people know, I'm looking into this. What tips do you have? And over the course of the past 6 months, I have uncovered that the woman that he was in the car with was actually a former employee of the high school where he attended. She was a security officer there. She resigned after video of her and the student having a relationship together was brought to the attention of the school. She resigned. The relationship continued after she left. And they were together that night. Earlier in that day, allegedly, he said he was going to kind of break things off with her. And then later on that night, they're in a car accident and he's dead. The school has fought me on FOIA requests. They've tried to pin thousands of dollars of fees so that I can't get the FOIA requests. So I continue to appeal them. I call the DA's office all the time asking, where are we with this investigation? What are the updates? And even if I get a no answer, I report that. Hi, I tried this FOIA request. They're fighting me. Here's a copy of the appeal. And I keep putting that out. My boss always tells me, just report exactly what happens. So if you hit a brick wall, report that. If you get somebody questioning your FOIA request and they stick an attorney on you before you get it, report it. And then the public will start to gain interest. And that's how this story came to light. Somebody got the public interested and things changed. So there are ways around it. You just have to have tenacity. And quite honestly, that's why I say support independent journalists, because we're the people that are doing the work that mainstream media will not do.
It's not filtered. We're unfiltered.
No, my boss hired me to do this, investigate corruption, political corruption, the stories that nobody will touch. So, we have no paywalls with our stories. We ask people to frequent our sites so that our advertisers see the views and then we can keep doing the work. But there's ways around it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, if you don't mind me, Brian, I just wanted to just give a round of applause for Jess in the comments section, please. Jess, you're doing an incredible job. You're one of the most awesome people. I was so happy to walk in this morning and see you. Your work has been exemplary, just amazing. Thank you. I'd like to also thank you on a personal basis because you posted yesterday about how you were stuck in traffic and left early in the morning. That inspired me to wake up an hour earlier, an hour earlier than I intended to, and leave an hour earlier than I intended to. And I got there with an hour ahead of time today. So I saw that post and I'm like, the
traffic has been brutal.
Yeah.
Right now. I don't know. I thought it was because of TB12 day yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was just absolutely, it took me 2 hours and 40 minutes to get home yesterday, which is, on a regular day, it's like a 50-minute drive.
I was planning to leave at 7 o'clock to get there.
Leave earlier.
Yeah, and I said to myself, you know what? Let me get up at 5:30 and leave at 6, and I got there at like 7:15.
Yeah. You can always nap in the car. I nap in the car.
That's what I said. Sometimes. Yeah. I said, let me skip eating breakfast. I go, let me just drive out there and I'll go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a nice double egg, sausage, cheese, croissant. That was my breakfast. It held me right through lunch. It was perfect.
Yeah, I always have trouble too. And I'm pretty close to the courthouse. I mean, I'm on a good day, I can get there in like 20-25 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But driving in, it takes me like an hour and a half. It's such a pain in the ass. By the way, Microdot's checking in. If you haven't checked out Microdot's channel, you're missing out. You need to go over and watch every single one of their videos on their YouTube channel. You won't be disappointed. So yeah, listen, we'll wrap this up. I know it's late. Everybody's tired. I'm going to get some rest here and try to get up as early as I can and get out to the courthouse. But I want to
guys, I should tell you, let me just interrupt since you're going to be there tomorrow. There is a parade tomorrow at 6 p.m. that goes straight down the main road in front of the courthouse. Great. So if you notice, the barriers were gone today in front of Norfolk Superior. And they let us know that there's going to be crazy traffic. It starts at 6. And so, if you're in the courthouse at 4 o'clock when you come out, 4:30, it's going to be wild. So just be prepared for that if you're going to be at the courthouse tomorrow.
Let me do this. Just going to add $25 more from Nicole. She says free Karen Reed. So we'll add that to the total if we can get a total before we get out of here. Jess, where can they find you? Give us your handles. Shout them out.
Jess Machado Show is my personal handle. And then obviously Fall River Reporter on Twitter. And then our website. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. We also have our sister site, which is the New Bedford Guide. We share a lot of the same content, so you can check out them as well.
Brandi, where can we find you?
I had to look this up last night. What's my Twitter? It's Brandi in Church. I had to look it up last night because you asked me and I couldn't remember. Brandi in Church is my Twitter. And then, of course, my YouTube is at Brandi Churchwell. And then the 13th Juror podcast is the whole second season is all on like a deep dive on this case that I started last year, and it's everywhere, like Apple and Spotify and everywhere.
Awesome. Mazza, where we can find you?
At Mazza Media on X and at Mazza Media _ on YouTube, because apparently someone else has a Mazza Media page on YouTube. I don't know about them, but jeez.
Find the real Mazza Media.
The real
You
Mazza
can't miss
Media.
it by the logo. Just look for the logo. You'll find it.
Exactly.
All right, everybody. It looks like we're going to kick back 51. I'll round it up to 55 for Karen tonight. So I'll make that donation. You know how I all post it. I'll post it up on the defense page. It'll say LTL Media Chat Raiser, and then the date 6/13/24. I'll take a screenshot, shoot it up on the LTL Media Facebook group, and then on my community tab. I want to thank all of these panel members again. I love these panels, and hopefully we can keep doing them like once a week. You're all welcome to come back anytime, and Jess will check back in with you next week.
You got it.
Perfect.
Good luck at
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Jess,
Thanks,
Brandi,
Ryan,
Brian.
for doing this.
Thank you. And
Absolutely.
thank y'all for being nice. I
Yeah.
I know that I could be controversial to people because I have said I'm open. So like I get a little bit of crap for it. Well, not really from free Karen Read people. It's all from the anti Karen Read people that give me so much hell. But thank y'all for not being like, thank y'all for not hating me.
I appreciate your work. There's been times I've been in the courtroom and I've gone to your page to reference your charts and things like that. It's very
Yeah,
helpful.
those are good
So
charts.
thanks for
Great
everything
charts.
that you do.
Thank you.
Award-winning charts, actually, in my opinion. We'll give you an
That's
award for
awesome.
that, so you can be an award-winning chart creator. Because those things are that webpage is the best. I love it. I would go on that too because it just sometimes I have little questions of like moments and times and orders of things that go to that page. I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff to retain, so it's good to have
Yeah.
that all broken out like that. Thank you, Brandi. You're
Everybody
awesome.
loved the show. Everybody loved the show. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks. And thank you, subscribers. Thank you, members. Thank you, everybody that comes to these lives and keeps these channel viable and going. And we're gonna stick all the way through this, through the entire trial. And if it wasn't for the man on top, Aiden Turtleboy Carney,
That's right.
not blowing this case wide open, he wouldn't have all of this support behind them and all of the support behind Karen. So thank you all. We appreciate you. I'm going to hit the outro. I'll get that donation up after the show. Bye, everybody. I'll see you out.
Thank you, Jess.
I'll be out
Thank you,
in
Brandi.
front of the courtroom
Good night.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Take the chances, take the drop, line up a media, time to die.